Welcome back to the Strawberry Corner NUFC podcast. We're on YouTube now, man. Subscribe, like, comment, hit the bell to set your notifications so you don't miss an episode. That's what you meant to say, isn't it? Anyway, today, just me in the biggin. Dean Harrison, how are you doing?
I'm all good, bud. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm doing well. Thank you very much. Olly Scholes is on a much-deserved family holiday. He's decided to cash in his podcast annual leave in one go, so there's no more left for the year. Although, he's just texted us, actually, saying he's checking out and it's going to shit. I've got no idea what that means, Dean. I'm going to guess that he's soiled the bed again. What's your thoughts?
That'll be his deposit lost. Change the sheets.
I don't understand. Yeah, how does your checkout go to shit? I don't know what that means unless you've got two young kids under the age of 3 or something.
Aye, it should be pretty seamless process. That hand your card back, off you go. See you later in the taxi or the bus.
In fact, I'm sure
I'll update one the next episode.
Yeah, we'll find out what went to shit. Right. Bournemouth away this Sunday, 2 p.m, live on the telly. 1,300 Geordies making their way down to the Vitality, one of which is our very own Scholesy, who will be doing some recording down there and hopefully get some good content for you all. Second game of the season, Dean. Bournemouth drew 1-1 away with Nottingham Forest on the opening day. A late equaliser. Form doesn't count for anything this early, does it?
No, I don't think so. Just with the transfer window still open, people coming back from pre-season at sort of different times, squads and teams just getting settled down. And I think look at a point for Bournemouth against Forest is a decent result, and we weren't over clever in our last fixture. So, look, I think the fixture last season would be representative of how I feel about it as well. Like, maybe on paper you think, yeah, it's a gimme, 3 points. It's a type of team that we should be putting away, but there are no mugs, and we'll have to be on metal to come away with 3 points. But I'm looking forward to it, and I do think we'll have a decent chance of picking up a good result. I'd like to think we'll have a positive response to the result in the performance from last week, and hopefully see we're kicking into another gear.
Yeah. Obviously, it's on the telly, Dean. You were mentioning before we came on air there. Is it the next 5 fixtures on the telly for Newcastle?
It's the next handful for sure, which is great. Like, I mean, if I can get any of the games, I will. But I also just enjoy watching it on the television. And I know there's a bit of a thing with some supporters about, you're not a true supporter unless you've got a season ticket and whatnot. But no, I'll be watching on Sunday and following the fixtures pretty closely. But yeah, look, I think it's great for us. Sky know what they're doing as well. They know that they'll get a good audience when our fixtures are on the telly. But look, the better we're doing, the more that will be on the television. And it's just nice knowing that we've got a run of fixtures ready to bang away and watch. And you mentioned that all of the games are on the television over in New Zealand. And I was just saying beforehand there that I find it just odd that in other countries they can get all of the fixtures, but back here, sometimes scrimping and scraping to see if we're on the telly. Like it, I just find it baffling.
Thatcher's Britain, mate. Thatcher's Britain. I've got one for you though. What's your thoughts on because people differ, right? Watching the match on the telly at home in the comfort of your own living room, no rowdiness, or do you prefer watching it in a bar where you can celebrate with others?
To be honest, maybe more so as I've got a bit older, I prefer at home. Don't know, it's one of them things, like if I think back to the Champions League games, for example, I feel like you've got to get yourself settled, sitting down, you've got to concentrate, soak it all up. Whereas when you're in a bar, there's just so much going on. Sometimes you're missing what's bloody going on the screen. But just to touch on the point of the beginning of the game against Southampton, it was great just being back in the stadium and that feeling of like that initial bit, the music's on, players are coming out, local hero and whatnot. Like I just remember thinking, wow, there's no better place to be on a Saturday afternoon at that very moment. So that would be first choice. At home television, second choice. And yeah, bar look sometimes, but preferably not now.
The only time I'm one for sitting watching it in pure silence and just the commentary myself and my own thoughts, to be honest, like, because when you watch a tune, right, you're like on the edge of your sofa, aren't you? Like, and probably not that nice to sit around, to be honest, when they're on the telly. But the only time I can recall where I thoroughly enjoyed watching the match out and about was when Newcastle beat Sunderland 5-1, and we were in Mood in the gate. That's how long ago it was. Unbelievable day that. Like, I can just remember it like it was yesterday. It was phenomenal. Nice memories. Anyways, mate, back to the game. So, Bournemouth had an okay season last season. They finished 12th. Areola has them playing some decent stuff. A good manager by all accounts. He was even nominated for manager of the season last season.
Yeah, I think the Bournemouth gig's always going to be challenging for any manager, just in terms of the size of the club and the stadium and everything that comes with that. But yeah, look, he came in at a time when there was a bit of noise about Gary O'Neill being ferried out of the club, and then Areola's come in, and I think he had a slow start, if I remember rightly, and there might have been some draws in there, and it took a little while to pick things up. But look, the club wanted to go in a different direction, and their owners wanted to do things differently, and they saw it fit to change the manager, and he's just went about his business under the radar, like, and I think as a result, at the end of last season, he started to get that credit that he rightly deserves. And I think, again, for us going into this fixture, you mentioned form, but I think it'll be interesting to see how Bournemouth play out this season, and it's his, it's his opportunity to kind of further stamp his identity onto the club and sort of see how they can kick on in that second season. I think the fact that they've moved Solanke on, albeit for a big fee, that would tell me that they feel pretty comfortable and confident about what they've got internally within the squad. And I know it's been touted that the Brazilian fella is likely to make his debut at the weekend. But look, yeah, things are changing there. In sort of not an unknown quantity, but I just don't think we can read too much into to Bournemouth of old, and it'll be interesting to see if they kick on this season.
Yeah, so they took 4 points off us last season. Obviously, it was the 2-2 draw at St James's, which was Matt Ritchie's 92nd minute equaliser, which was a great day. And obviously, they beat us 2-0 4 days after our Jones to Dortmund, which was if I remember back to that time, Dean, we were threadbare in terms of the squad, and we really struggled that game. We got a spanking, right?
Yeah, that was a really difficult watch, and difficult because frustrating, but also you could kind of see it was easy to see that the players completely out of steam really that day in particular. And so then that balance of, well, yeah, frustrated, and how much criticism do you want to throw to the team? Or actually is it just that understanding of we're in a difficult time and we've just got to try and get through it as best as we can? So yeah, that was a low point, I think, last season. We're certainly going into this fixture in a much better place. But look, as I say, that'll give them confidence. They'll not necessarily fear us going down there. So as I've touched on, we'll have to be on with metal. But look, I'm feeling pretty confident still. Yeah, I think that day, Stu, you'll remember it was didn't feel good about it at all. You'll remember when Kieran Trippier had a little bit of a back and forth with one of the supporters at the end of the game.
I do. It was disappointing, right? I know it was kind of blown out of all proportion, but I think it was just kind of testament to the day, wasn't it? Of kind of how Newcastle were in the season just then. And frustrations were just boiling over. Probably in the fans as well as Kieran Trippier and the players feeling exhausted. But yeah, mate, it all just boils back to being prepared for at the start of the season, doesn't it? And having a squad to be able to fulfil both competitions. But that's a whole different story altogether, isn't it? But yeah, I do agree. I think we'll go there as a different team now. Obviously, the squad's looking a lot fuller. Kieran Trippier is not going to kick up any fusses with the fans because he'll not be playing lately. but yeah, you mentioned, Dean. Obviously, Solanke's gone to Spurs, and he had a decent game actually. When the time that he played at Spurs at the opening day, he got both goals last time round. So is that their threat gone? Do you think, or do you think this Brazilian guy is going to come in and he's got a bit about him, right? He's signed for 40 million, which is no small change from Porto. Porto have got a track record of developing these Brazilians and selling them on. I think back to kind of Deco and the likes. It's a well-oiled machine when it comes to producing talent. 24 years old. He's played for Brazil a couple of times as well. 37 goals in 96 games for Porto. The Portuguese league, mate, I'm not fully up to scratch with that, but I'm gonna hazard a guess. When you think back to kind of Jardel and the goals he used to score in the Portuguese league back in the late 90s, it's not the Premier League, right? I think he's in for a rude awakening against Dan Burn.
Look, I think Mario Jardel, that's a whole different thing because I've listened to some stuff and apparently he was a bit of a lively character off field. Look, I don't know enough about this fella, but what I would say is you'll always get that, whether it's the Portuguese league, the Dutch league, those types of divisions. Look, some come and make it, some don't. I think, again, just a testament to what I was talking to before about how Bournemouth have evolved. Like, spending 40 million on a player is a big deal for them, and they clearly have confidence in the purchase. And look, I think the fact that Solanke's gone, which was the initial point, doesn't mean at all that the threats disappeared. Look, he'll be very much wanting to hit the ground running, and and Solanke scored a couple of goals against last season. He'll want to do the same. Evanilson, isn't it, Stu?
Evanilson, that's his name, yes.
He's played with Bruno, so I think Bruno will know a little bit about him, and I'm sure if there's anything worthwhile being passed on, it will be. But no, certainly the threat of Solanke disappearing doesn't mean that Bournemouth aren't a threat. And look, let's just hope that the new fella takes a little while to get up and running. And you've mentioned Dan Burn in particular, so I'd like to see another performance of a similar standard from Dan Burn on Sunday to back up the one that he put in against Southampton, because I thought he was very good.
He was very good. Led from the back, didn't he? So how yet to win down there as Newcastle manager. Let's hope that this weekend is the one. Team predictions, Dean. Obviously, Shaw banned. Was in Eddie Howe's press conference a bit earlier that they did appeal the red card, but it was turned down, so that the 3-match ban does stand. I think Newcastle have asked for clarity as to why. You would imagine that they do reply with a reason, but seemingly not. Do you think this is an easy one? Is it Krafth's place to lose here? Obviously, he came in when Shaw was sent off and was a substitute for Murphy, and Murphy went off, and he played well. Krafth came in, did his job. does he keep his place, do you think?
I think so. I think it's just the easy decision to make in the fact that Eddie Howe will have confidence in that he was thrown in there really against Southampton. We've come out with a clean sheet. I would find any other decision a little bit peculiar, to be honest. I know that Lloyd Kelly will be in the mix, but Eddie Howe still brought Krafth on in the first place, and I don't think he'll shake things up too much. And my gut feeling is he'll want that balance between a right-footed and a left-footed player. Like as I say, to give that balance. So I think you're right. It's an easy one. I think that's the way that he'll go. I think as much as Eddie Howe mentioned in the press conference that Lloyd Kelly was pushing for a starting place, I think he's being just sensible with the fact that he's alluding to that he wants competition and he wouldn't want to dishearten Lloyd Kelly by coming out in a press conference and saying he's got no chance of starting. So I think there'll be very few changes, if any at all, and Krafth will stay.
Is there a potential here that Lloyd Kelly may come in for Lewis Hall? Like, Lewis Hall, maybe he's had a 6 out of 10, let's say a 7 out of 10 against Southampton. Obviously made a crucial block on the line, which was great. But I'm just thinking, obviously last time out, Bournemouth had 19 shots, quite attacking. Obviously we were exhausted, like we said a bit earlier. But does he potentially bring Kelly in for Hall and just shore up the defence a little bit, allowing Tino to attack and the other three come in as kind of a narrow? Or do you see Hall just continuing to deputise?
Good question. If I was to be straight with you, I think that's going to be a coin flip all season. And it'll be very much dependent on how Eddie Howe wants to play and set up. If he wants to continue evolving the team, as I've mentioned before, having wing backs that can bomb on, then we'll see a lot of Hall. But there'll be times where he'll want to go back to more of a model that we've seen before, where when Dan Burns played left back, we've went a little bit tighter with the three in there, and we've just allowed that freedom for Trippier to go. Obviously, we'll get that same thing with LI-VRA-MEN-TO. I think for away games, I wouldn't be surprised if that is the way that he goes and maybe utilises somebody like Kelly. But I really don't know. It feels like the knowing Eddie Howe as we do now, I think he might stick to his guns and just go with actually, we've got a good result, we've got a clean sheet. We might see something more similar to what we saw against Southampton, which is Hall will start, and then when if things are going well, we want to lock the game down, then we would see Kelly come in. But it is a coin flip. I wouldn't rule out either. It'll just be dependent on how he wants to set up initially.
Yeah, I know we've only seen Kelly a few times now, and obviously you got limited minutes against Southampton. But to me, mate, he looks really calm and composed on the ball, and you can tell he's got good football IQ, just the positions that he takes up in his body movement. So I'm really keen to see him, some more, to see how he kicks on and starts his Newcastle career. But he does look a good player, especially for nothing. Has he impressed you so far? I know it's been limited.
Yeah, well, look, it has been limited, and I suppose the jury's still out, but not the jury's still out in a negative sense at all. Just, I suppose we'll form an opinion when he's really been tested. But I think you're right with your assessment. For me, he feels like a bit of an upgrade on Dan Burn, to be honest. And rather than, I know we've talked about that, will he play either Kelly or Hall? But for me, the long-term thing there, it's to put competition on Dan Burn, really. And I know, again, there'll be loyalty to Dan Burn. And he's done a brilliant job, not disputing that. But there were certainly times last season, at the back end of last season, where he looked a bit overrun. And that would have, I'm sure, been in Eddie Howe's thinking about thinking about how do we find replacements, how do we find more competition, and that'll ultimately get the best out of the players. So let's see. But I feel good, certainly again because of the business that was involved to bring him here, and it's a player that the coaching team know a lot about. So I have every faith in them that he's going to add a little bit of value, whether it's as a regular starter or as more of a squad player. But I'm fine with either on that.
Just on that left side of the defence, good to see Sven Botman pictures come out from the club, and Sven Botman posting some pictures of him out on the grass. I mentioned to you, I don't know if you've seen the size of the scar on his knee, but it's whenever you see a scar that big, there's been some serious reconstruction gone on that knee. Always a worry, mate. You never know how a player's going to return. I mean, it looks like a shark's bit his leg. Is that's how big the scar is,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You just don't know how players do come back and respond to that. And I think what I always liked as well about Botman is that he was pretty mobile for his size. He could shift, and I'd hate to think that an injury like that would maybe take a yard away from him, because that'll take something away from his game. But I also think with sports science and everything the way that it is now, I'm sure that everything within the club's power will be put into getting him right as best as they possibly can. And I don't think we'll see him rushed back at all. They'll want to do it right. And look, there'll be lessons learned from that in the first place, because in hindsight, he probably played on a little bit longer than he should have done in the first place, and maybe that's contributed to where he's ended up at. But no, good to just have that engagement, and we'll certainly be welcomed back with open arms. But yeah, it's going to take a while, isn't it?
Sure will. I think Howe said probably after December. I think it was the last time he talked about it. Just back to the team, Dean. Another guy that struggled, I'd say, was Anthony Gordon against Southampton. If we gave Hall a 6 or a 7 out of 10, I think Anthony Gordon would be a 5 or a 6. I think watching that performance from the bench, Harvey Barnes could count himself really unlucky not to be in that team. Could you envisage a scenario where Harvey Barnes starts in this game, or do you think it's Anthony Gordon again?
I think he's backed himself into a corner a little bit, Eddie Howe, with this one. I mentioned to you and Ollie in the group, didn't I, that if I was Harvey Barnes, I'd not be happy, and I'd just be having a chat about, am I just going to be a bit poor player here, or what? Because to the same token as what he did with the Livramento Trippier thing, and Trippier wasn't ready, didn't train enough, blah blah blah. Livramento's had a good pre-season. Well, you could exactly say the same about the Harvey Barnes and Anthony Gordon situation. I think with the talk about the interest from Liverpool and maybe having his head turned or whatever, we'll not go into that. But maybe Eddie Howe just wanted to show him a little bit of love. But I do think he's kind of in return then set him up to fail a little bit, because he didn't look ready. And whether his head was turned or whether it was fitness, he didn't perform well and he didn't look ready. We know he's got a lot more to come. So I'm not really knocking the lad at all. But yeah, whichever it was, he wasn't ready. And Harvey Barnes was. He's had a decent pre-season. He's been with the club. He's been with the players. He was ready to go. And if anything, maybe the change there is you start Barnes, you play him for 70 minutes, and then Gordon comes on to finish the game, maybe, and brings that little bit of additional energy. But I go back to my thoughts, Stu, which is, why on earth aren't we trying them both? But I don't think we'll see that either against Bournemouth. I think Eddie Howe will feel a little bit obliged to start Jacob Murphy just because he was sacrificed. So I don't think we'll see that change. I think Anthony Gordon will start again. And I think Jacob Murphy will. So I don't think we'll see, as I said earlier, an awful lot difference to how we started against Southampton. changes during the game may alter, but I think the only change will be Emil Krafth and I think some of the other players that have performed well will certainly be looking to kick on. Joe Linton, Sean Longstaff, Dan Burn. So, yeah, we'll see. But I do feel, anyway, just to wrap that one up, I feel like Eddie Howe backed himself into a corner a little bit with Anthony Gordon. I feel like if he was to turn around now and say, actually, I'm not going to start you because you weren't ready or you didn't perform well, then I feel like that could waft some air onto the flames a little bit, and just don't need to go there.
Yeah, I do agree. Right, so, yep, Krafth, the only change that we're expecting. Last time out, Dean, last time we won at Bournemouth, rather, 2019-20 season, won 4-1. Can you name the goal scorers for us? Two of the lads still are in the squad currently.
Two of them are in the squad currently. Longstaff.
That's one, yeah.
Two of them are in the squad currently. Oh. Joe Linton?
Nah, so the two that we've still got, Longstaff and Almiron, and then the two departed players, mate. One, Dwight Gale, and then the last one, hazard a guess, probably a name that people have forgotten.
I haven't got a clue, but let's be a little bit more upfront with the listeners, because we test run this, didn't we? And I said, cannot remember who the fucking hell that is.
So Valentino Lazaro, that magical right winger who currently plays in Torino. One to forget there, mate. Obviously didn't make a mark, did he? So, mate, on to score predictions. What are you thinking?
I think we might be looking at maybe 1-1 draw. I'd like to go with a 2-1 forward, but I think it's going to be reasonably tight. The reason I say that is just because I think both teams will go in there in decent fettle. I don't think this will be a lopsided result either way. I think we're coming to Bournemouth at a good time because we're in a reasonable place with the squad. I know we'll have some long-term injuries, but we're certainly in a better state than what we were last season when we went down. And again, for me, with their change in centre forward with Solanke and Evanilson, I'd like to think that maybe it'll just take a little bit just to get him up and running. So I'd like to say 2-1. I wouldn't be surprised if we come away with a draw. That would be my good feeling. What do you think, Stu?
I'm going to go, right. I think it'll be 1-0 in Newcastle again. I think it'll be a similar game as it was to Southampton last weekend. Not that we'll lose a player, but I think we'll do a lot of defending. So I think that we'll get a goal, maybe late first half or early second half, and then I think we'll sit back and then we'll see it out. And they'll just kind of build on that defensive solidity that we've been shown, which isn't great for the fan, right? We want to see, flowing football and cohesion and goals, but I think it's going to be a slow build into the season here. So I'm going to go 1-0 Newcastle, and I'm going to say Isak from the pen spot.
Yeah, I think, and just to reflect on sort of double barrel here with Adam Armstrong's comments about the Newcastle players being animals, and then Eddie Howe's followed that up the day, and he was asked a question about, did he take it as a compliment or would he take it as a compliment? He said, yeah. And he said, look, he says, we didn't show it enough last season where we were a little bit dogged, and we did show that against Southampton. And he said, certainly the season before that we did, and he wanted to see more of that. And whether it's pretty or not, look, we're going to have loads of moments this season where we'll play some attractive stuff, score some great goals. But we've chatted about it in the pre-season, haven't we? In earlier episodes, where that naivety, and actually we just want to shut games down, and sometimes you just got to do what's got to be done. If we were to turn up to Bournemouth and just want to play as we wish and think we can run over the top of them, then we could be banging trouble and get hit on the counter and whatnot. And so, yeah, look, I'm not saying let's go and set up to take a draw or nick a win, but ultimately when there's a game, there's two teams that turn up, and Bournemouth will have very different ideas to what we have and how they want the performance and result to go. So we'll have to roll with sleeves up and following on from that Southampton performance, as much as it wasn't pretty, certainly the show of character and the doggedness was really quite pleasing, and I'd like to think we'll see more of that on Sunday.
Yeah, for sure. Right, mate. Let's move on to a few other bits that have come out this week, Newcastle. So just a few words on this, mate. Kieran Trippier, obviously, there's been speculation that there's been interest in him from Everton and a few European clubs and some Saudi clubs. Something's just not right here, is it? It's just not sitting well with Kieran Trippier at the moment. Obviously, I think he's got stuff going on in his private life. Eddie's comments don't really give much away in the press conference. He's kind of saying, he's leaving it open, isn't he? Basically saying, yep, he's still here, but obviously if something happens, blah, blah, blah. He's very, very Eddie Howe comments. Can you see anything happening here, Dean? With obviously seven days to go of the window?
I can. I think it's the end of the January window kind of all over again. I'll not go into it, but you touched on maybe some personal circumstances. And yeah, look, the lines that come from Eddie Howe were very much the ones that we've heard before. I mean, even if we go all the way back to St. Maximin, which was, we love him, we want him to stay, but, if it makes sense and the deal's right and blah, blah, blah. So I haven't taken anything additional really from the press conference this morning, but I do think, to answer your question, I do think we may well see something this time round. I thought it was going to happen at the end of January, to be honest. But I just think something's got to eventually give. Like, this can't rumble on forever, and sometimes things get to a point where, as much as you've got a lot of love for a player and he's got a lot of credit in the bank, like, this is disruption and don't need that. And I know things will settle anyways when the transfer window closes, but look, there seems to be a little bit of agitation going on here, whether it's coming from the player or the agent or whatever, I don't know. But I think for me, if we bring in a centre-half, I think you'll go, because Eddie Howe will also be relaxed about Emil Krafth being a backup for LI-VRA-MEN-TO. So good feeling is yes. Let's see how it plays out. I'm sure it'll not be a quiet week that's about to come.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you touched on it there. He's got credit in the bank, right? He's had a few ups and a few downs at Newcastle. Obviously, had a few injuries. He's had some great performances as well. So he has give his all for Newcastle. He'll definitely go kind of with a positive vibe, in my opinion. Probably goes down as probably Newcastle's best right back in my lifetime, I would say. In the period that he played, I'd say he had a good solid 12 months. Obviously, to take your opinion on that as well, Dean, but if you throw Habib Beye in there as well for that one season, which was absolutely phenomenal, wasn't it? He got player of the season for Newcastle.
Yeah, look, he'll be fondly remembered, if he is going to go. And I think, for me, in a way, I have no issue with him going either, because what I would hate is for him to stay and for that legacy to change. He'll just be remembered for me as kind of a catalyst for that resurgence at the club and those changes that came into the team, not only on the field but off the field. So I would hate for that to sour, because he's ended up staying for too long, or we've kept him against his wishes, or whatever it may be. But but also I think he's pretty professional, isn't he? And if he is going to stay, I'm sure he'll keep his head down and do a job. But if he doesn't go this summer, I think it would be January. I think this will rumble on, and I think it's maybe best for all parties that that change is made. And then, yeah, look, I certainly think in our lifetime he'd be right up there. I think, you know, I remember at a young age it would be more like Steve Watson, Warren Barton, and then really there was a bit of a drought thereafter, and I think then Habib Beye was probably the next that came along that had a fair bit of credit. For me, Trippier probably does top the lot. If I was to do a little bit of a Premier League era fantasy team now, yeah, I'd probably put him in.
Yeah, definitely. Another item that came up there through the week, Bruno, they made the team captain, which has moved Lascelles to the club captain. Just a progressive appointment, do you think? I know we've talked about this in the group chat quite a bit this week. I'm not too sure that the captaincy is, you know, all that it is made out to be in football, but I think, you know, I don't want to speak for you, mate, but you think it's quite an important appointment, yeah?
Well, not necessarily the appointment, because I think it's not a surprise. I think Eddie Howe's mentioned it as well there, that they've went about it pretty low key. And I get that. I mean, look, we've got a leadership group there. There'll be times where I'm sure different players will end up wearing the armband. Touch wood, it's more through substitutions rather than injuries. But the feel at the club for me, it's very much always about the collective, the squad, the team, the coach and staff all pulling together and everybody kind of, you know, going in the direction, being on the same page. So whoever's in a position of kind of responsibility, I'm sure that they're well aware of what Eddie Howe's after from them. I don't think, and to your point, I get it, like, I don't think too much is put on one individual player's shoulders at all. So yeah, not necessarily a big or an important announcement. And it was kind of, it was a bit odd that it kind of came out a little bit really after the Southampton fixture rather than beforehand. But I think that just shows that kind of they're just going about the business, and I don't think it's disrupted too much internally at all, if at all. But I do feel like it is an important role. And look, maybe if I give a bit of weight to the reason behind why they've kind of officially come out and said that Lascelles will be a club captain, I think that player responsibility bit's really important. And Eddie Howe's mentioned it this morning there at the press conference, like he wants 11 leaders on the field and they want leaders around the training ground. And I think he is a coach, and they're a coaching team that they do put a lot of responsibility and kind of empowerment to the players. And so Bruno and Lascelles are kind of that focal point, and it shows that Lascelles is held in high regard given the fact that they still want to give him some responsibility in and around the training ground, albeit that he's not featured really consistently for an awful long time now, and won't obviously with the injury. And then with Bruno, I think for me the type of captain he'll be, and you know, and he's captain before as well, before Newcastle, but he's maybe not a shouting and a baller type of captain, but he loves getting involved with the fans. He's passionate like that. But I think also for the players, he's probably a bit of a motivation and inspiration just in the way that he goes about his own business. So I don't think Eddie Howe will be sitting down and having discussions about selection with him at all. But I do think still there's a real value to having a captain who's a leading light for the rest of the players and leadership group. And just to finish on this, I think all different coaches and managers will use their captains in different ways. And as I say, just to kind of recap, I think for me, it's an opportunity for the coaches and coaching team to put a bit more responsibility onto the players. And we know, from being involved in sport and also, seeing other clubs have had successful dressing rooms. The best dressing rooms are the ones where the players are running things themselves. So important. I think I like Bruno's vibe as much as he's committed, passionate, competitive. He also comes with that enjoyment and that smile. I think you touched on it, didn't you, donkeys ago, about the pre-season clip that came out, that smile on his face. There's a real healthy balance there with his approach, and long may it continue. And I think really pleasing as well, actually, just that he's came out and he's talked about some of the legends of the club, and he's talked about how he wants to emulate them. So really pleasing to hear, and really excited to see how his captaincy plays out.
Can't have enough personality in the game for me. It's something that's been lacking, so the more personalities, the better. Just on Marc Guehi, mate, and the saga rumbling on. Just keep it brief. Do you think it'll get done?
I do. Do
you think it's a midnight on the window shutting kind of thing?
No, not necessarily. I think there's rumours there coming out that it's pretty close now. I think we're at a point where this doesn't need to rumble on any longer, really. I think both clubs seem to be pretty close. It's clear that the players are happy with the deal. So yeah, look, you asked for a brief. I can answer that with 2 words. I do. I do think it'll happen. The only thing to throw at, if I can, actually, I'm going to throw something at you, Stu. Would you rather go for a player like Guehi for somewhere in around the 65 million, or would you prefer that we kind of split the difference and we picked up a centre-back and a right forward for somewhere in and around about 30, 35 million pounds each?
I think for me, this right centre-half is vital. You just look at the profile of the defence, it's a signing for the next 8 to 10 years. So in my head, this centre-half is vital. So I think 70% of the budget going on it makes sense to me. That's also having in the back of my mind that Botman might not come back the same. Dan Burns now 32. Lloyd Kelly, we don't know how he's been injury prone in the past. So yeah, I think I can see the logic behind dropping the majority of your budget on a centre half. But that doesn't mean that you should go out and get a second-rate right winger. It's one of those, mate. Like I think from a fan's perspective, and you see it on social media all the time, they think Newcastle can just go out and sell Almiron tomorrow and bring in a player and it'll be this much plus this much, and it doesn't work like that, mate. Players have got contracts, and I would imagine Almiron doesn't want to just move to Saudi. He'll be quite settled in the northeast, and he'll have a contract. You only got a new contract I think it was last season. You can't force players out, and I'm for one and thankful for Almiron in all that he's done, to be honest. I don't know, I can't kind of throw any names back at you in terms of right wingers. I do think we'll bring one in, and it might be a younger profile, I don't know. I mentioned you before we came on, I'm not that keen on Madueke from Chelsea. I think that's just kind of filling a space with a shirt, really. I don't think it's kind of adding any value. Sterling, not for us. Yeah, mate, I think they might surprise us with a right winger. Might come from Europe. What's your thoughts on the right winger?
Probably in agreement. I mean, if I wouldn't be against the fella from Leverkusen coming, and then that given we're a little bit of a buffer to get someone decent as well for the right forward. But I'm also not disappointed at all if we get Marc Guehi. Like I'd be really pleased with that signing. I think it's just about patience, isn't it, and chipping away with trying to get those improvements to the team. 1 or 2 at a time, a window at a time. I think that's the way that it's going to be. As much as I think it's an area that we need to improve, and I don't think we will, but we we certainly shouldn't be panicking. If we're not going to bring somebody in that's going to have a significant impact in comparison to the two players that are occupying that position at the moment, and Murphy and Almiron, then there's no point doing it. And also, to be truthful, I don't really think the way to go is like a Lewis Hall type of loan with an obligation to buy. I think if we're going to really strengthen in that area, we do that a little bit maybe later down the line, whether it's January or next summer, and we'll approach it in a similar way as we have to the centre half position here this summer, and we'll throw something proper at it, and not just keep her on a level playing field with where we're at, but we'll significantly improve that area. Would be my thinking and way to go. So, and for me, Madueke, not bothered. Like, so, just leave it for me.
Yeah, I did say, I know one of the names mentioned, and it gets mentioned over and over, and we've mentioned it, is Chiesa from Juve. And I only mentioned it because I seen today that Barcelona are bidding for him, which just is a strange bid, isn't it? Like, I can't see what they're a funny club, Barcelona, nowadays. Anyways, let's leave them there. I don't know if you've seen it, the club's video that's come out with the players pronouncing the names. Quite funny. If there's one thing that you do over the weekend, please listen to that video. It's hilarious. Couple of things for us to take away, which, we don't pronounce Shaw's name properly, which is Shea, and Joe Willock is Joe Willock, which is odd. I think everyone pronounces it Willock, but never mind. But the funniest, mate, Tino LI-VRA-MEN-TO, I think he's a bit of a piss taker, isn't he? You know his Keith. Tino LI-VRA-MEN-TO. I don't think that's how you pronounce the name, mate, is it?
Is that what we've got to do for the future episodes?
I think so, mate. I think so. Dean, I think we'll leave it there today, mate. Obviously, you can get us on social media. We've got Bluesky now, as we've previously mentioned. You can get us at strawberrynufc.bsky.social, and we're also at X at strawberry_NUFC, Instagram, same handle, at strawberry_NUFC, and we're on Facebook now as well. And on Threads, same handle, at strawberry_NUFC. If you want to email us, you can do which is strawberrycornerpod@gmail.com. Ideas for features, want to get involved, any questions, any remarks, comments, we'll take it all. And yes, if you could give us a 5-star rating on Spotify or on iTunes, that would help us a great deal with that algorithm. Right, until the next time, away the tune.